Until now, all of our work has been done using just our view windows. Now, the view windows are fine, and they can actually help you build quite a good scene. But if this is an animation that you're going to take out for film or television or some type of advertising image use, then you really need to put a camera into the scene and start viewing your objects through what the camera sees. For game objects and game animations, that's not really necessary because they're just going to be exported to some other world and deal with the view as it's defined by that other world. But for TV, film, all those other uses, we really need to talk about a camera. So it turns out that adding a camera is not that tough to do. And first thing we're going to do is get rid of the grid. So display, uncheck the grid, and okay, now let's add a camera. So create camera. You see there's all these different kind of cameras here. There's ones with aim and an up, which keeps things pointed in the right direction, or at least lets you know what the right direction is if you're going to be doing all kinds of camera flybys and fly-throughs and things like that. We're not going to do that for right now. We're just going to do a basic stationary camera. So we can just start with this first one here called camera. So just select that, and the camera comes into the scene. It's basically a little 35 millimeter looking camera that's kind of like an old movie camera, and it's in wireframe. Even if you have shaded on, it's always going to be in wireframe. It's always going to be kind of small when it comes in, and maybe that's fine, maybe that's good enough. It really doesn't affect what happens on the screen, how big or small the camera is, but to move it around and see it a little better, it's probably a good idea to scale it up some. And we can do that here in the channel box. We can also do it in the attribute editor. So let's just select that and come down to scale, and I'm just going to move it up from the default of 1 to 5. Okay, and so there now it's bigger. If you click off of it, see a little better. And I'm going to go to the side view here and dolly out a little, and then just select it. And with our translate tool, just going to move it up here into a rough position, and then let's just rotate it down to point sort of in general at the sphere. Okay, well that's fine. And we can check the other views to see, make sure it's all lined up in the front view here. And really that's enough, but just go to the top view if you want. Again, it's not really necessary to check the top view, but there it is. And we can come back to the perspective view here for a second. Now, that's roughly lined up. It's not perfectly lined up, but it's in the ballpark. Doing it this way, looking at these different views and seeing the camera and sort of guesstimating that it's where you want it, I mean, that's okay, but that's kind of like taking pictures without looking through the viewfinder. And if you had to do it that way in the Stone Age of 3D, you kind of did. But this isn't the Stone Age anymore, so we have better tools. And the first thing we're going to do is come here to the Panels menu. And the first menu here, it says Perspective. And under that, we see one of the choices is Camera 1. So choose that, and boom. Now we're looking at what the camera sees. It's no longer our perspective view. Now it is our camera view. So now we can run our animation and see what it looks like. So let's just come down here and run it. And okay, we can see it. The bouncing ball is falling out of the scene. So what do? Well, what we do is come over to the View menu here, Camera Tools, and look at that. Our first three tools here are very similar to our View tools, and we have our track and our dolly and our zoom, And we can just select one of these. That'll become the default, and then use our familiar Alt and mouse buttons to drive the camera around. So just select one here, and now just move the camera around, and our dolly works from the middle mouse button. Our left click rotate, middle click dolly, right click lets us move in and out. Okay, see if this is better. Yeah, it's kind of better. Well, this is certainly better than just sort of guessing if it's the way we want. We can just come in and just edit this, move it around as we're watching the animation. And, we can say, all right, that's looking good. It's a little close to the top. But there's actually one more thing we kind of should do before we decide to really dial it in. And that is to look at this view in consideration of what our image size, our image rendered output size is going to look like, and what the rendered aspect ratio is going to be. And we can do that using something called a resolution gate. So we come back to our view menu here in the view, and come down to camera settings, and we want to choose resolution gate, bottom of the second section here. And there it is. Okay, puts some of these little bits here on the sides. Now, it's going to depend on what kind of image X and Y you've got set and whatnot as to exactly how these appear on the screen. But what these do is sort of mask out slightly the area that isn't going to be part of the rendered image. And you noticed it changed the sort of the distance a little bit as well. So now if you look at the ungrayed out section, that will show you a much better approximation of what's going to be rendered. So now we run our animation again, and we can still drive our camera around, and now we're getting a better idea, because this is based on what's going to render. So now we'll do our final adjustment here, whatever we want. Okay, that's looking pretty good. So we can stop the animation. You don't have to let this run like this as long as this. Really, all you need is to see what's going on. You might want to scrub through as well like this, just to catch and make sure you're not missing something that's flicking by too fast to really notice. Okay, so that's that. That's how that works. Now the camera is actually got a lot more controls here, and most of those are found on this second tab when the camera is selected. And you come in here, and this has all kinds of settings and controls and things that you would actually find on a professional camera. You've got the lens angles, you've got the focal length, you've got things that a regular camera would have. You've got near and far clip planes, which is not something a camera would really have. It does a little bit, and that's like if you can take a photograph through a chain link fence, and because the chain link fence is so close, it doesn't really show up in the picture. That's kind of approximated by this near clip plane anyway. Far clip plane would say, well, if things are just too far in the distance, they're just going to be ignored. And these settings were actually used a lot more in really ancient versions of Maya, back before it was even called Maya, when you were trying to isolate objects. Now we can hide geometry and things like that. In the early days, you couldn't, and you had to just do that with these clip planes on the view menus. So or on the view windows. So that's that. There's actually a whole lot more here: camera aperture and aspect ratio and all kinds of settings. And then we come down here to the bottom. There's even stuff like depth of field in an actual physical camera. Depending upon the aperture and the lens and things like that, only certain things are in focus at any given time. Depending upon settings, that you can have a narrow depth of field, so only a short distance close to far is in focus, and things closer than that or further than that are out of focus. And depending upon what your f setting of the camera is and whatnot, that can be changed. Well, in a computer camera, you have even more control over that. You can say, well, I want it to actually have this kind of setting for focal length and whatnot, but I want the depth of field to work this other way, that physically it wouldn't. Or you can make everything in focus, or change things around however you want. So lots of control that you don't necessarily have in the real world. So it's good stuff. It's kind of mind-boggling right now to look at all these things. We're not going to get into most of these. We're just going to come up here to the File menu and save, and get our little message. And that's it for this video.